Wow. Welcome welcome all to one of your shows again here on the program, your program, Sankofa, your host, Maponga J, where we are discussing issues of the past, looking into the present and focusing into the future. And here on your program, we'll bring you accountants, we'll bring you bankers, we'll bring you politicians, we'll bring you kings, traditional leaders, traditional healers, teachers, young people, politicians, artists. Today we're lucky, we got an advocate in the house, but he's crossing his legs between advocacy and a bit of religion. We'll hear him out and have some fun time with him. But of all the things that colonialism has given the African continent, the legacy of colonialism is not only managing our finances, managing our politics, and managing our fashion, and managing our entertainment. But there is also this other element, which I think many people are not very much free to talk about, because they, I think, intentionally in our subconscious, it has been placed in our identity. So that when someone is asking you who you are, it becomes one of the very first few sentences that you speak. I am Maponga J, and who are you? I'm a Christian. You know, you will not even remember to go back and say, who's Tute, for example. No, ndingu Khumalo, ndingu Mtungwa, ndingu Zikote, ndingu Chambase, ndingu Ban. Only in the rural areas. So it almost looks like our definition of our identities have actually been linked very closely to Christian issues or Islamic issues. Why am I mentioning that? Because immediately you begin to talk about Christianity, you actually need lots of tablets of high blood pressure and diabetes, because people's emotions are going to go up into the sky, and people would swear and curse in the name of God. And I've always said, how sick is it that Africans can be sitting around discussing the Trinity and the image of God when the world is burning with corona? Instead of sitting around talking solutions, it looks like entertainment and politics have become the playfield and entertainment for the poor. And for this evening, I want us to take a small little short left, and I introduce to you a guest of ours, beautiful guest that we have, Ike Thamsanqa Khumalo, and he's an advocate, and he will be taking us through some of his journey, his own personal life experiences. And as we learn about other people, I hope you, if you are out there and you listen out there at home, you can also hear how other people, how other fellow Africans, children of our Keblam, are also battling, putting these pieces together, trying to make sense out of this theological sense to theological nonsense. Let us take some time and have a conversation. Who is Babe Thamsanqa Khumalo?
Firstly, good evening to your viewers at home who are watching all over the world. Thamsanqa Ike Khumalo is born and bred in Soweto. Come from that generation, you know, a generation that fought for this country.
1976 group.
1976, I was still a little boy. I was 4 years in 1976, but I managed to witness what was happening in 1976. So that's why in the mid-80s, when Oliver Tambo said, make this country ungovernable, I was part of that, because I've seen my sisters who picked me up at kindergarten in 1976. People shot in front of me. So yeah, it was inevitable that I was going to, you know, fight the system. In 1985, I was arrested when I was 13, you know.
13 years old.
Yeah, 1984.
How was the arrest? Take us through some of those experiences.
No, you see,
what had happened?
At that time, because we believed that anything owned by a white person, we need to destroy it. If it's a vehicle, we need to take it. If it's anything that belonged to the white person, be it the system, because we did not recognize the police system, because we said the government of the day, it's an illegitimate government. So we had, you know, hijacked. Now in the criminal law, they'll say it's hijacked, but yeah, we are repossessing.
You were repossessing.
What belonged to us.
You were redistributing wealth, you know.
Yeah, so when the police came, so some of my comrades, they fled, you know, because it was normal in Soweto to take cars. We call them targets. Yeah, so, and sometimes we burn them, you know, but there was that culture, you know, saying, no, don't burn them, sell them. So I was detained. Those days when you're detained, you didn't know when we were going to come out, you know, and the beating, you know, you'll go from one police station to the other, you know, you'll be beaten up. So Yeah, it was like, those moments,
So you came face to face with the apartheid government. They gave you a pinch of their own.
I think everyone growing up under this system, whether you are growing up even in the year 2000,
yes,
you're always face to face with apartheid, because the legacy of apartheid is continuous.
It's deep.
Yeah, it's going to be with us for a very, very long time.
Very long time.
So
your education, where does it take you? Where does it take you? At home? Maybe let's start at home. Who is the father to Thamsanqa Khumalo, and what is he doing in those years, in the peak of all this chaos? What is happening?
Look, like most children, we are born, in a Christian family, baptized, in apostolic church, and my father was a priest, and you would not miss church, Yeah, under my father, you would not miss church.
Not one day.
Not one day. If you miss church, he told you go to here.
You will not eat.
Yeah, I should not find you here. Yeah, so, and by the way, I also liked religious stories, because to me they were entertaining, when they say once upon a time there was a David and Goliath. So I enjoyed them, Even at school I excelled, because I was always in church religiously.
Okay. So at least you gathered enough, some intel.
But the good or the bad thing about, if you mix the struggle with religion, you start to question. You start to question why apartheid, why is God, not protecting us? Why are we praying to the same God?
And we are singing Senze. Who are we singing that song?
Yes, and you find that the oppressor and the oppressed, they are praying to the same God, but
and
only one is answered, So, yeah, you start asking questions. So I was, one of those kids who always ask questions. I'll ask questions endlessly, and irritate you.
And irritate. I mean, if I have four children, so I know, Dad, what is this and why, and then why, and I say, hey, I hear pande, you lose some patience sometimes. Yeah. So you grow up in a pastoring home,
yes,
and you become a teenager there. And when you get into your college space, which direction, which profession did you pick up?
Look, I wanted to be a school teacher.
Wanted to be a teacher?
Yeah, but my sister discouraged me, because she's a school teacher. And my school teachers as well, they said, no, you should do law. Back in the days, when people find you arguing all the time, they say, no, you're going to be a lawyer. But my passion was always, teaching. First choice, it's teaching. Yeah, law, it's second choice. But I found that, teaching cannot be confined in the classroom. You can teach anywhere. You can teach in court, you can teach in the streets. Nowadays we've got social media. You teach, wherever you find yourself.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you ended up going to do law?
Yes, I ended up doing law. And the Roman Dutch law.
Here is Thamsanqa Khumalo, an advocate. Yes. An advocate in the chambers there. Who has studied the Roman Dutch law. I was just pulling his leg before the program started. So your personal journey, academically and professionally, you are a practicing advocate.
Yes, I am, sir.
Wow.
I prefer litigation in court. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's a good one. Family-wise, you sorted in that front?
Not yet married, but I do have kids.
Ladies and gentlemen, particularly ladies. Let's say ladies who have an advocate in the house, but I will not share his number. But I think we can make an arrangement and just make sure that one man is happy at least. In Sankofa, we look after each other. No, and if you're having a problem finding a woman, we have traditional people who come here sometimes. They might have to go to their aunties and make an arrangement.
No. I look forward to that.
You look forward to that. Yeah. Fantastic. And what brings you to our program today is a conversation that we had in terms of where you are coming from and your journey, particularly on the spiritual side. We just wanted maybe to give a background in terms of your professional stuff so people can have an idea. Who are we talking to?
Yes.
While you were growing up and you went through the religious spaces and you went through the church paces and everything that was there, learned what you had to learn, when did the junction in your growth pattern begin to take shape in one way or the other for you to begin to formulate your own personal space from the colonial system to whatever you want to term it? When was the break point? When was the tipping point for you to begin to say, this no longer, I cannot relate to this, I need to start growing in a certain direction?
Well, if I may base your question on the religious side, when I was in standard 6, we used to call it Form 1 then, I asked my school teacher, it was a biblical school teacher, because I was a bit worried, because now we are starting to learn about Egypt, the civilization. So I asked my school teacher, why is it that the Bible, they always mention Israelites. Then I asked the teacher, where is a black person in the Bible? And she told me that God chose the Jews or the Israelites to reveal himself. That did not sit well with me, because I've never felt so lonely after that. I felt like a reject. I felt like a reject, but something in me questioned that narrative, because that narrative did not make sense. I said, if God is omnipresent, omnipowerful, God, cannot be a bi-God. God cannot choose one family, and lose the other. I'm not a stepson, or I'm not a stepchild, in God's kingdom. So, and I said to myself, maybe African people, they have their own Messiah, but due to colonialism and apartheid, perhaps us, or ours, was not highlighted. I didn't have a formula or a doctrine or a theory to back that up, but I told myself that I'm going to search.
Something in your spirit was telling you,
yes,
there better be another narrative out there.
Yeah, there better be another narrative. And what did not sit well with me is that the person who was telling me that he's a chosen nation, he was self-corroborating the story. Imagine you're going to KZN. A Zulu person tells you that he's a chosen nation, to rule over you. And you say, let us verify the story. The story is verified by the same Zulu person.
Aye, man.
Yeah, so the witnesses are Zulu people. So I said, no, this story is one-sided.
You're talking like an advocate now.
Yeah, I said, no, this story...
The law of evidence. The law of evidence
yeah,
will not
work. We need an independent source.
Yeah,
we cannot have the very same Jewish fellas telling us that,
So you were sitting with a Jew.
Yeah,
and the Jew is telling you that I am the chosen. Then to prove that I'm chosen, I must read you my Bible.
Yes, and the more you learn, and you start saying, you know what, the African people were here first, because we learn to discover, archaeology and stuff. And you say, you know what, if you were chosen, where was this conference? Where was this general meeting where you were chosen, where I was not informed? I said, no ways, I need to know, why were we not told, invited in that meeting where others are chosen, so that you do not contest, the results of the elections. So I did not get answers. So even now...
He calls them the results for the election. Yeah.
Yes, when others are elected and we're not invited, and we are told after the fact that, here's a chosen, you have chosen a president, you have chosen a chosen nation, follow this guy.
For the rest of the world's history.
I said, no.
The rest of you are slaves.
Yeah, the rest of us are slaves, and say, no, this God... is a God of love.
Where did those questions lead you to? When you started up, when I can hear, if I was your teacher or your neighbor, I could say you were starting trouble. Where did your trouble lead you to?
I started to read. I started to read more as early as I can, And fortunately, because I moved, from the ANC to the PAC. And the PAC, it's more Pan-Africanist. So I normally regard, without insulting, I would say if the ANC, it's UJ, the Pan-Africanist or BCM, is the Harvard of politics.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I got that side, so I found other people.
We're reading then.
Yeah, reading, and people who had the same consent, as I did. So they started to giving me books, and one of the earlier books that I read, it was Dr. G.M. Jackson, The Stolen Legacy, which opened my eyes. As I read The Stolen Legacy, then I realized that, we are not stepchildren. We are special people. Actually, we are the chosen people, because we're here first.
Wow.
Yeah, we civilized the world when there was no Europe. We had a doctor for every body part when there was no Europe, no Greece to mention. And this journey came late, And I started to read, and I realized that, the so-called chosen nation, they stole our story. They superimposed themselves into our story. They have no background, they cannot account.
They have no history.
Yeah, all I know is that they come from the Caucasus Mountain yesterday. When the world has said long time ago on civilization. When we've civilized, we've built pyramids, we've built mathematics, we've built everything. So I started to get confidence,
What which had been destroyed earlier on. You were a recovering addict, sort of a religious addict.
Yeah, it feels good. It feels good, to know, your history, because it is important to know your history, because most people will say, what is the use of history? It is important, because if you don't know who you are, you'll be forever going, with your head hanging low.
Yeah.
But if you know that in the past, I have conquered, I can still do it again. Like, I'll give you an example, when it comes to football. You see, you can take a 10-year-old Brazilian guy, playing soccer. He has this mentality that, we have won before, I can still win it again, even though he's been on the world stage for the first time, because he has history, behind him. So with us, if we've got
history,
I
like that.
Yes, because if you don't have history, and besides, if your God, don't look like you are in serious problems. Because
ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Advocate Thamsanqa Khumalo, giving us some paces on his spiritual journey, how he moved through the greater part of the apartheid later years and created and moved into his career path. But today, I want us to investigate his spiritual journey and how he ended up being where he is, trying to bring balance between the colonial form of education for Christianity and how that affects. When you come back after the break, I want him to delve in the first question: how has colonialism benefited from Christianity, and how has it played itself onto the African political terrain? What has been the involvement of Christianity in terms of our present political terrain? Don't go away. We'll be back right after the break with Advocate Thamsanqa Khumalo.
Hello. Being a legal practitioner in South Africa in these challenging times demands lawyers that will help clients beyond legal issues. The ever-changing demands in commerce and tourism require lawyers who have sound and clear business and commercial knowledge, and that's where MB Chabangu Incorporated comes in. Our business, mining, tourism, health, labor, and economic knowledge encapsulated with law and litigation experience gives us an advantage in the legal sphere. Our experience in assisting businesses, government, and various industries with their needs puts us amongst the many progressive and striving law firms in South Africa. Now, to contact our attorneys for assistance with any of the mentioned fields and others, please call us on 012-341-4187 or send us an email on admin@chabangu.co.za. MB Chabangu Incorporated, where problems meet solutions.
Well, welcome back to your show on Sankofa, where we are in conversation with Advocate Khumalo, taking us through some paces of his own personal journey from academia to profession. But of interest to us today is there's extensive reading in terms of the great Kemetic knowledge systems and how that plays itself into the political space. And just before we went for the break, I was structuring a question to you, which I wanted to start with on top of the program. How do you think Christianity worked in terms of couching, designing, planning, assisting the greater political colonial system?
Well, you cannot separate Christianity from colonialism.
It maybe includes Islam also. It does include both religion, brother.
Actually, all major religions of the world, they were used as a propaganda tool and as a tool to colonize us, because you know very well that the missionaries that were here first, they destroyed us spiritually. Those people who had land, they ended up with the Bible, but very poor. And the religious or the religions of the world, they did not add something that we did not know. Actually, they remixed what we had. You know, it's a cut and paste of what we had. But I can never separate colonialism and the major religions of the world, because if you look today, the Catholic Church, like many churches here in South Africa, be it the Church of France, they've got most of the land. And yet we need land. So for me, religion, it played a major role.
Major role.
Yeah, in colonizing us.
Well, that's quite interesting. And but in some cases, you find that actually religion became a shelter for the political parties. Look at the Methodists, but Desmond Tutu, for example, in South Africa here. You look at what was happening there. What kind of a relationship? How would you remove the religious part? The history of the ANC, for example, and many other political organizations is actually entrenched in a church sort of space.
Look, let me answer your question in this fashion. You might join any party or any organization that is tailor-made to destroy an African. But if you are an African in that body, you can join the Freemasons, you can join any structural body that is, you know, aimed at destroying us. But that Africanness that is inside you, it will tell you that, you know what, you need to rebel. That's why in these churches, you'll find many of the bishops or pastors going against the narrative, you know. Like for an example, if you go to South Americas, you'll find the pastors there, they support armed struggle against the Catholic. Even here, you know, you find some of the pastors, they supported guerrilla attacks. They supported those people who had arms, hiding arms or ammunition in the churches, because something inside an African, your spirituality, it will tell you that, you know what, I'm one with my people. This is not right. So you'll start to defy
the system.
The system.
Take us through your journey. Where are you? Here are the religions, as you are talking about them, Christian religion that you are brought up in and grew up in, though your father used to make you to go to church and etc. What changed? What changed? I want us to get to the bone of contention. What changed to be who you are now? Where are you in terms of your spirituality?
At the moment, as I said earlier on, that I was raised in a Christian family. At the moment, I'm following, it is not a formal path because I'm still learning. The journey is like, you know, it's forever continuous, but I'm embracing my African people, and I'm embracing black people more. You know, people who were there in Kemet, people who discovered every source of civilization, people who discovered, you know, every scientific discipline. So I'm following that, you know. But as for foreign religions, I've discarded myself from that because they were very instrumental in my oppression. And even if you check, during colonialism, 1652, most of the slave ships that came here, you know, even in Americas, some of them, they were named after Jesus. So for me, it did not make sense. So, but at the moment, I'm embracing black people in particular, without any apology.
Without an apology. Any class, because I know, particularly the African who lives now, we like classifying people. Yeah, I'm Christian, I'm Catholic, I'm Presbyterian, I am.
That is the problem.
What?
You see, the problem of Africans, you know, we always choose these things. You know, someone is saying, I'm a socialist, I'm a capitalist, and without even, you know, realizing that all these things, these concepts, they were stolen from us. You know, be it communism. I mean, Europe is a very cold place. You could not have discovered a beautiful concept like socialism, capitalism. We were practicing these philosophies without giving them a name. You know, even the concept of Christianity, thou shalt not kill. You know, it didn't need a Bible, it didn't need a Quran, it didn't need a Torah to tell you that, you know, respect thy neighbor. So we were always practicing these philosophies and practices without giving them a name. But after colonialism, we started putting people in boxes, and which has made us to regress. You know, because now you look at Africa, we are fighting this religious war, and these religions, you know, they're not even us. We are fighting over capitalism, socialism. These things, they're not even us. With us, we always, practical people and say, you know what, I need to help that person. I need to be productive here. So we're always like that. So until we drop these titles, these definitions, we won't be going anywhere.
But the environment we're living in needs some form of structure, in so to speak. Like if it is a philosophy or an ideology, where it can be captured, encapsulated. I hear you talking socialism. I hear you talking Ubuntu. I hear you. I was trying just to maybe to run through in your peripheral of your mind and see what kind of feeding of a common sort of knowledge system that you can say, if we should run governments like this, run families like this, run communities like this, with some sort of peripheral, circumference of information that can. That's what I was looking for.
You know what I'm running away from?
Yeah.
To define ourselves in terms of or putting boxes around ourselves, because that has been a problem in the past. Because if something comes from outside, we start being skeptical about taking it. Like for an example, I have a problem with the Americans. Yeah, their economic policies, their foreign policies. But if they discovered something good, I will use it to my advantage. So I'm saying that as Africans, we should be open-minded. We should not close ourselves in boxes. Like now, there's a problem with coronavirus. If something comes, be it a vaccine, it comes from Germany, it comes from China, and is not harmful to us, I will use it. Same way as today. No one can be a purist. You cannot be 100% African. The cell phone you are using, it's probably not made here. But if you start saying I'm a purist African, there's no such a thing. Civilization is a development of mankind. I add step A, somebody put step B, So for me, I'm saying as Africans, we should be practical, and look at what is it that is working for us and adopt it. If it's something is not working for us, then do away with that thing.
Let me throw you back to some old Kemetic knowledge in your Pan-African space. And since you're an advocate, I think this will be closer to you. The Ma'at law versus the Roman Dutch law, the laws of Ma'at in Kemet. And how would you compare that? Because again, I'm trying to, in as much as we're not boxing each other, but here was something which I might want to term a universal Kemetic law. And I like its affirmations. I will not. Vis-a-vis the Bible that says thou shalt not. The other one is an affirmation of what a person is intending to do. It comes from inside out, whereas the other one is coming from outside in. How would you compare the greater laws of Ma'at vis-a-vis the constitutional Roman Dutch environment which has been created by democracy?
You see, when you speak of Ma'at, you speak of that balance, the individual and the community. And when you look into our laws, it always, seek to find that balance between the individual and the community. But when it comes to Western laws, they are very individualistic in nature. It's like my right, us, when you get married, it's not you who's getting married, it's our families.
The village, and the dogs, and the cats.
Yes, that's why they say you cannot divorce, even if you die, the wife still belongs to the family, where she's married into. So, unfortunately, we seem to be gravitating more towards Western law, which is very individualistic in nature. It's like I, and with us, we are people of the sun. We are a warm people, unlike Europe. Europeans, they are very cold people, and they are driven by this thing that there was never enough in Europe. If I've something, or I've hunted and I've got something for myself and family, I have to, keep it close within and my family, because there was never enough. But us here, we always shared. So you are a warm people. So unfortunately, there'll always be that contradictions.
Let me pick the bone of contention. Jesus, according to you, who is he?
Jesus. In my world, I have found that Jesus never existed. Unfortunately, with African people, they are so touchy about Jesus, without understanding the concept of Jesus, the concept of Messiah, where it comes from. And today, I'm glad, because you can research, before the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, there was no Jesus. It was Serapis, Jesus was made by a vote. Constantine walked into a meeting of 318 bishops, and he said, you will adopt the image of Serapites to be Jesus. But before that, we had African people in the Middle East, which it was East Africa. There was no Middle East, before the Suez Canal. Yeah. That part,
North Africa.
Yes. Yeah. We had the Messianic movement, which are black people, who were fighting Rome. And, the rest of the world was trying to colonize them. Like, as you know, that, since people emerged from the Caucasus Mountain, they were envious of us. They always wanted, to colonize us. They were never enough. So unfortunately, with black people, when it comes to Jesus, I have no problem when somebody says, Jesus lives in my heart. But once you start saying, yeah, he can live in your heart. But once you start saying, there was a person called Jesus, you are now entering into the historical realm, of which no such a person has ever existed. Even if you go back to the writers, at the turn of the century, nobody mentions Jesus. He has never existed. I mean, the concept of Messiah is as old as mankind. It's million years ago. I mean, there are books now that are written, 100 Messiahs, 500 Messiahs before Christ. There's a book by John G. Jackson, Christianity Before Christ. The concept of Christianity or Christ was stolen from us, but we are not even aware. Rome imposed, this Christian Messiah, into us, and we started to adopt it, and we hold it, we fight over it. So for me, until black people do away with this Jesus nonsense, we'll never be free.
How do you then reconcile your refusal of a Jesus when the biblical text in the Synoptic Gospels state that there was a man and they actually give him a genealogy and
the Bible? You have to go to the genesis of the Bible. The Bible is literature. That's why I'm saying most people confuse literature and the historical account. The Bible, it was written, if I may say it, with due respect, it's one of the greatest pieces of propaganda ever written. I can compare it with the Mein Kampf, if you want to see the similarities. So the Bible as we know it today, it was given to us, thanks to the Romans, and later revised by King James. But before that, we had these books. That's why if you can go to the Dead Sea Scrolls, you can find that we had all these stories. Black people did not have to wait for the Bible to know God. We did not have to wait for the Quran to know God. We've known this concept. We had our own, Jesus, be it Horus, or Heru, as we have called him. So we had the concept of Jesus, which is a mythology. But unfortunately, through these councils introduced by Rome, where they adopt the Council of Caledon, the Council of Ephesians, the Council of Antioch, they kept on revising. And eventually, it came to a point where they gave Jesus human characteristics and history. Yet, Jesus was invented by the Flavian Caesar Titus, and his father, Vespasian. Before that, before Constantine, walked in that meeting, the Council of Nicaea saying you should adopt this Jesus by hook or crook. There was no Jesus. The image of Jesus was always black. You have Serapis with a cup on his head. So, and this Jesus story was backdated, as if he existed 2,000 years ago, and you hear people saying Messiah is coming. And even if you show them the Bible, we confuse this thing. I had one guy yesterday with, arguing. He said, the second coming is here. I said, no, Jesus is not coming back. I said, okay, fine. Let's assume that he existed. Let's read the Bible. You look at Matthew chapter 24. You look at Luke chapter 21. Jesus himself, he tells you the signs of the time. They say, Father, or Pastor, when are these things going to happen where we see the sun, coming from the sky? Jesus says, this generation shall not pass before you see this thing. But people confuse thinking that in 2020, he's speaking to his people. He says, this generation listening to me now, not you 2,000 years later. You say, it shall not pass before you see these things happening. And there's a part there, we also say, many will come. Saying, I am the Messiah. Listen to that. Jesus saying, many will come, or claiming, saying, I am Messiah. Do not be deceived. That's a statement of denial from Jesus himself. He's saying he's not the Messiah. He's saying, many will come in my name, saying I'm the Messiah. Don't be deceived. But, because we choose to listen to what we want to listen to. But Jesus in my research, he has never existed. He's a creation of the Catholic Church.
My word. I think I need some glass of water here to drink and catch my breath a bit. When we come back after the break, I want to push my advocate, learned friend here, to take us through maybe some of the critical components which comprise the Council of Nicaea. Maybe what are the, over and above the creation of the Messiah, I would want us to move into iconography issues. I want us to move into ecclesiastical liturgy issues. And I want maybe the Christian who is living today, when he looks into the Council of Nicaea, what is it that we are doing now, which was actually structured then? Because then it was a vote, now it's doctrine. Your host is Maponga J on your show, Sankofa, with my guest here, Baba, Advocate Thamsanqa Khumalo, on your program, Sankofa, where we are exploring individual journeys, individual stories about people and how they are coping, making sense of the greater political, economic, and spiritual spaces in the greater 21st century. We'll be back right after the break.
The power to defeat coronavirus is in our hands. Play your part by following these 5 basic precautions. Regularly wash your hands with soap and water or sanitizer for at least 20 seconds. Maintain a safe distance of at least 1.5 meters from people around you. Wear a cloth mask at all times when in public. Always cough or sneeze into your elbow or tissue. If you're an employer, screen your employees daily for symptoms of COVID-19 and where appropriate, refer for testing. Working together, we can beat the coronavirus. A message from government.
Challenge your ordinary. Experience the extraordinary.
Not only the government, the municipality here has had no plan.
Now, I believe that my peace is my most valuable asset.
Absolutely beautiful! This is exactly what I was looking for!
Camping!
DJ Khaled!
It is a day to celebrate.
We're ready for action.
I like it when it's nice and soft.
Yeah, that is nice.
How was it like growing up in Nigeria? Yes, sir, you know what it is.
Feeling is there that, you're doing something special.
Stop being so dramatic, Mira.
You should just be what you want to be.
Experience the extraordinary with StarSat.
Welcome one more time to your favorite show here on Sankofa, where zero tolerance, zero favor, zero lies. If people are free to come through, share their own experiences as we are building our greater African continent and sharing beautiful life experiences, we can learn from each other. In my tribe, we have a proverb that says, when mountains have dew, dew will always flow to other mountains. We learn from each other, we grow from each other. And I think many people are sitting out that there might want to scream and scratch their chairs and say, that man is what, this man is what. Hey, it's his life, it's his journey. It's your life, it's your journey. We're here to be sharing each other's stories, edifying one another. And just before we left for the break, you mentioned something about the Council of Nicaea. Those long councils from Ephesus to Cadonian to Nicaea itself. Yeah. Can you maybe just scantily, in an eagle's view, because the modern Christian who is living in the 21st century finds a catechism, finds church manuals, finds doctrines, with hymn books and packed. All you do is open page so and so for today, open page so and so. But if you look at the formulation of what happened on the Council of Nicene to where we are now, what sort of factors do you think the church plays? What sort of contribution does the church play in terms of shaping the 21st century as we have it now?
I'll say this, maybe to go back to what I've said earlier on. African people are the only people in the world that they have a God that don't look like them. So if your God don't look like you, you are in trouble. And if you look at the Council of Nicaea, you have to look at it in context, from the beginning.
Where it is happening.
Yeah, where it started, when the Flavian Caesar started, to hijack this messianic movement, or to hijack the fundamentals or the basis of Christianity, right up to the Council of Nicaea, because there were people who were still disputing, Rome having the monopoly in that region. You look at the Council of Nicaea, there was a guy, a bishop called Arius. He's a black man from Libya. He was contesting when Jesus, or when the image of Serapis was made Jesus. He disputed because he still had knowledge. He still had the books. And there was a collaboration between Constantine, and he told one of the black guys, Pope Sylvester, one of the first popes, he said, you know what, let us suppress this dude. Because he's now telling the people, he's vocal,
He's messing up the plan.
Yes, one of the decrees was that let us suppress this guy, and then adopt that Serapis is now Jesus, and let us ban the books. They banned the knowledge system, the libraries were banned, and we had no recollection, no memory banks, and it plays Rome or Europeans, because if you look at the religion, if you follow Christianity, Europe is on top. If you follow Islamic, the Arabs are on top. If you follow Judaism, it is the Jewish on top. So religion and politics can never be separated. Even if their garments, if they say to you, wear a certain white garment, who is manufacturing the garment makes money.
Wow.
Yeah. If they say, give tithes, to Rome, who's making money? We are forever looking at Europe. We are forever looking at Middle East. We are forever looking at Middle East to give us instructions via this religious doctrine. Like now we've had, a constitutional court judge, Mogoeng here in South Africa, saying he's obliged to love Israel. In his mind, he thinks that there were people called Jewish. He doesn't even understand that the Jewish concept, it's as early as 500 AD. Jewish people have never been to Egypt. They faked their identity. They took a black man's identity. They said it is them who've been to Egypt. You go to Egypt today, you'll never find traces of history that there was a person called Moses.
How about you,
so I'm saying that
they are not there in the Egyptian history. So all these stories of Moses and in the river Nile and the birth of Moses and the liberation of the Israelites, how do you read that? How do you want us to read that story now?
It's all fiction. From Adam, you look, from Genesis to Revelation, it's all fiction. They took our images. These are people who imaged in Europe in the 580s. They could not account for their whereabouts. So they looked into an ancient people, because black people are the only people who can be termed ancient. There is no ancient white person. They are recent. They cannot be ancient. So they took our image. They stole our image. They said it is them who were in Egypt, and they were given the promised land. You look today, you can find our own people. You can go from Cape to Cairo, Ethiopia. You'll find skeletons, of our people. Where is the grave of Moses, Samson? The Philistines, they were in multitudes. I'm sure somewhere you can find their graves. You can find their bones. You cannot find them because it's fictitious. So, but African people believe that, there was a Moses, from Egypt to Israel. Just a small distance. It took 40 years to go there. Why couldn't he just walk 30 minutes there? And then we believe the stories, that he had to part sea. Why do we have to part sea to go to Israel? Take you 30 seconds, but it took there 40 years. So we, have been bamboozled. We're not even aware that, these stories were remixed, were given to us and by people who had no other motive but to oppress us. Because if I say God chose me to govern over you, you hand over everything. Like we've seen now, people are complaining about fake pastors. A pastor will just show up in the morning and say, give, it's mine. God, told me, in my sleep.
Yeah.
And then you give.
In my sleep. I'm being silent so that I can take it all in. I want to understand exactly where you're coming from. Yes. According to you, sir, how do human beings come into existence? According to you, where do we start? How do we start? When do we start? Who starts us? According to you.
I don't know if you mean existence as in the genesis of where we come from.
The genesis, the black people. I'm no longer caring about anybody else. I want to zoom into your knowledge base and say, here you are, a fellow Bantu like myself. Where do you think we come from?
Look, where we come from, it's a matter of mystery. But our ancestors, that's why they wrote these stories, the mythology, the story of Adam. It's million years. I mean, if you go to Egypt, you'll see God Ptah making men out of clay, which is the original story of Adam, where this Adam story was stolen from. So men, in order to understand where they come from, so they came up with these mythological stories. Like we've had mythological stories everywhere and anywhere where we find ourselves. Some stories, they are there to, to teach us about respect. But African people are not atheists. African people, they believe in God. They believe that somewhere we were created by God. So that's why they always try to, have that link between ourselves and God. So a matter of where we come from, I can say we come from God. How?
You don't know.
It's an age-old tradition.
Let me zoom in into you again, much more personal. So in your own personal spiritual space, what does Thamsanqa do with himself in terms of we have said we're talking church, we're talking Islam, we're talking African culture and etc. But in your own spiritual space, what do you do to connect?
Look, I don't need a church to connect. I still connect with God. I can pray, to God wherever I find myself. This idea of a church, it's very Eurocentric because the Europeans, they believe that they can take this almighty power and put it in a building, where he's captured. And I find that that's arrogant, because when you look at Christianity and most religions, major religions of the world, they try to define God in human terms. They give him human characteristics. They say God he rested on. God is who God says he is, or if he's a he. You cannot define God. It's not for us to define God. God is too powerful to be defined by us. But for us as human beings to say God lives in this church, God,
we even have verses that says, "Don't make buildings. I don't dwell in buildings built by men."
Yeah, that is very arrogant. So God, you can find God everywhere. That's why I'm saying we can, so long as you can interpret God's spirit. I can be in the streets. I see a person almost being raped. I will stop my car and help that person. There is God there. Sometimes you find criminals. They're about to rob you. There'll be that one criminal who says, but let's leave this poor guy.
Let's not kill him.
Yeah, let's not kill him. There's a God there. So God is everywhere. So, but with us, we seek God in that building. And that building, without realizing that it's not our building there. The door, and the key and the lock, we don't have control, it is the same as when somebody say, use formal means, but you are not in control of formal means. Yeah. Or use proper channels. You are not in control of proper channels.
Especially when the poor wants to get what belongs to him.
Yeah, they say
then he's always referred, you must do it properly.
Yeah.
I passed the comment, many people thought I was being reckless, where I said, if land was taken without law, then how do you want to take it back with law? What was taken without law must be taken back without law.
And the law will always favor those who create laws, because they create these laws to protect themselves, And they will say, no, we don't want to bring this world, under anarchy, but they're protecting themselves, with these laws. You can go back, even in the United States, you look at the genesis of bodies like FBI, CIA, we think that they were meant to protect, the society. No, they were meant to protect a few bankers, not you. Unfortunately, as Africans, we fail to realize that things don't operate the way we think they do. You see a hospital, you think that the hospital is there to help the sick. No. I mean, the hospital, it's profit-making, the pharmaceuticals, you know. The cure exists before the disease. You know, they drive you to the drug. You see the police, you think that the police are there to defend you. They're defending those who are powerful, you know. But we are a by the way. Yeah, so, yeah, even with religion, you know, you look, I mean, there's a book that I wish people should read that book. It's written by, it's a good book, you know, Nation of Islam in America. It's called The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. It will tell you who owned the Dutch East India Company, the British East India Company, all these companies, the multinationals who colonized the whole of Africa, who went to Australia, who went to Americas, you know, how these pseudonyms, and people will be surprised, you know, if I told you that, you know, a person like Jan van Riebeck, there's been research after research, nobody can find Jan van Riebeck, even in Holland. It's a pseudonym, you know, to disguise a certain nationalities. That is so good when it comes to banking, financing, you know, and they, you know, enslaved the young of Europe, Holland, England, you know, forced labor, took them here, they hide. I mean, let me give you, if I were to ask you a question, during slavery in the 1400s, you know, colonialism, who was in control of the banks? You need money to push slavery. Who was in control of the banks?
I know that the Queen was involved, and I know the church was involved in one way or the other.
The banks.
The banks.
Let me tell you, the Christians, they had a doctrine before they changed it, which said, money is the root of all evil. So there are those, you know, Jewish people who were allowed, you know,
to hold the money.
To hold the money, to control money, because they were not allowed to trade in land and all that. So by the turn of the 1400s, they were in control of Europe. You know, you check that book that says the secret relationship between Jews and
Islam.
Black.
That information
is there. Who funded it? It uses the footnotes, you know, from Jewish scholars, you know, who are saying, bragging, like they brag about capture of Hollywood, empire of our own, you know. So people who are supposed to be a chosen nation, they enslaved us. They owned the Dutch East India Company. That's why today the DPS, you go to Zimbabwe, Botswana, you know, the Afrikaners and white of Europe, they're just managers. But you come here, you know, who's leading the narrative? When people, when you raise this thing, will be told that you're anti-Semitic. But I care no more.
Wow. Wow, we're sitting here in the studio with Ntate Advocate Thamsanqa Khumalo, who is giving us his personal journey on the issue of spirituality and where he has traveled so far, and the reading that he has done around the greater Pan-African space, finding his own footholds in the spaces of making sense of the political, economic terrain. Maybe one last question for you before you can give us your parting shot, then I'll do my last closing words. Okay. In your own world, if let me just ask you maybe 2-3 questions.
Yeah.
Thamsanqa Khumalo is the president or is the leader of Africa. Give me 3 things that you do. Just 3 things.
I'll give you one for now. The most important thing that I will do as an African leader, I will make this country to run on a 24-hour basis. I've been saying this for the past 20 years, that the economy must never sleep. It is people who must sleep. In Germany, it is the only country under Hitler which had no unemployment because they were still looking for people to work. You know, you go to Hong Kong. Wow. Money must never sleep, because when we are sleeping here,
it's working somewhere.
Yeah, other people are awake. You can imagine if we're trading here in Africa, intertrade, you know. If I'm sleeping, when I wake up, I find my counterpart has done half of the job. I continue. You know. Let me give an example. Like, you know, if Midrand is connected to Pretoria, to Joburg, and there's floodlights, you can wake up in the morning, you buy fresh milk at any shop, somebody must deliver that. That car that delivers the milk, it uses tire. If it gets a puncture, somebody must fix that. Everything must just, you know, or must rotate. You know, if I order a suit now, I get it by, you know, 5 o'clock, I proceed to the meeting. Money must never sleep. The security, they are forever working. So I would work harder on that.
And actually that doubles the whole employment.
Yes.
Where you have employed 10, you're now employing 20, 10 in the morning, 10 in the night.
And that helps us to beat up countries like your China, because China, they're dumping their problems and products all over the world. So we'll be able to compete with them and say, you know what, we also have surplus surplus products. You know, if Australia, they order a German part, a BMW German, we say, no.
We can produce it
We'll
also.
produce it now, you know. We'll get it in about 24 hours.
Wow.
You're never sleeping. So
I never looked at it like that.
I think that should happen. And also, others, you know, are those things that, you know, your corruption and all that, you know, we should ease on that. But there'll always, you know, be those greedy people. But mainly on the economy, you know, and if...
No sleeping.
No sleeping. And the one thing that we also lack as African people, we should learn from other nationalities who are successful, like the Jewish people, the Afrikaners, when they ruled the world, or this world of ours. The secret society. When we ruled the world, African people, we had secret societies. You know, there are certain people who are in influential position who need to shape, you know, the direction. We had the Buddha Bond. We've got Freemasons. We've got the Illuminatis in other countries. Yes, but us, we're talking like, you know, in scattered voices. So we need to have, you know, I've got a bishop here, I've got a lecturer here, I've got a banker here, and say, this is our mandate. We are driving towards this point. We don't have that.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, I think towards the end of this show, it was getting exciting. I think we should have started right here, discussing strategies for the greater African continent. And I'm so happy to have heard it from the horse's mouth. If we are supposed to be running Africa the way it must be, I think we are sleeping too much as Africans. We need to make sure that these industries that we have, you people who are in big cities where there is enough manpower and enough power, electricity and etc., do not close your businesses. Employ more people to work morning, evening and night. Increase production. By so doing, Africa will be able to have all the resources that we need. Avoid getting yourself constipated and too much obsessed with this whole thing of church and every day morning, Sunday morning from 8 to 10 in the evening, Monday for women's prayer meeting, Tuesday choir, Wednesday men's meeting, Thursday, you know, Dorcas, and Friday, you know, more worship and fasting. Saturday, it's a networking. And you look at the amount of time people spend in church buildings. And you hope that you can change an economy by spending all that time in church. We're not saying church is bad. If you are going there, let's do it also nicely. Countries like China don't even believe in God, but those are successful. They're successful. No, don't even know a church. You cannot even carry a Bible in China. They'll butcher you. But they're successful. Therefore, success in Africa is the most churches, but the poorest. The poorest. I went to Nigeria the other day. On every street corner, there's some buildings. There are more than 15 to 20 churches that are running in shifts. Every one of them, prayer, fasting, and binding. Binding, prayer, and fasting, and binding, and casting out spirits. But man, economy cannot be cast out by a spirit. This is a recipe of economy which needs us to put the correct financial systems in place, correct HR in place, correct machinery in place, correct management strategies in place, vehicles that can deliver for us the economy that we need as Africans. And I think too many of us, we think that by becoming prayer warriors, we can conquer the problems of Africa. This needs labor, this needs brains, this needs our effort, one and all. I cannot share much more gratitude with my honorable friend who came to visit me today, Advocate Thamsanqa Khumalo, who came to share with us his own personal experience and how Africa can be great again. I am your host, Maponga J, mwana wa Razaro, mwana wa Marara, Muchena, Vuzijena, Chigara Mboko, Ugara Mashamba Huda, Chira na wana wewanji. Wana makumbe mwana mwesende weshana, wana chigara mawake matanda anovora. Chibwe chiteza chino bugwana wana manga waripedo wano tambanacho. We don't meet your social until we see you again. Have yourself a wonderful evening. Asante sana. Shukran. Here on Sankofa. Have a good night.
Hello. Being a legal practitioner in South Africa in these challenging times demands lawyers that will help clients beyond legal issues. The ever-changing demands in commerce and tourism require lawyers who have sound and clear business and commercial knowledge, and that's where MB Chabangu Incorporated comes in. Our business, mining, tourism, health, labor, and economic knowledge encapsulated with law and litigation experience gives us an advantage in the legal sphere. Our experience in assisting businesses, government, and various industries with their needs puts us amongst the many progressive and striving law firms in South Africa. Now, to contact our attorneys for assistance with any of the mentioned fields and others, please call us on 012-341-4187 or send us an email on admin@chabangu.co.za. MB Chabangu Incorporated, where problems meet solutions.
The power to defeat coronavirus is in our hands. Play your part by following these 5 basic precautions. Regularly wash your hands with soap and water or sanitizer for at least 20 seconds. Maintain a safe distance of at least 1.5 meters from people around you. Wear a cloth mask at all times when in public. Always cough or sneeze into your elbow or tissue. If you're an employer, screen your employees daily for symptoms of COVID-19 and where appropriate, refer for testing. Working together, we can beat the coronavirus. A message from government.